Here is the Cabinet Manual, published in December 2010, and it contains 11 chapters, 148 pages, and it is the first comprehensive guide to how the executive branch of government, and in particular the Cabinet, works. And in the past there's been plenty of guidance. In fact, we counted earlier this year, there are about a dozen different pieces of guidance about how ministers operate. There's the ministerial code, there's guidance on judicial review, how to deal with the devolved governments, but nowhere was it all pulled together in one place. And the Cabinet Manual, for the first time, is a single comprehensive guide. The idea was first proposed in part by ourselves, the Constitution Unit, working in partnership with the Institute for Government, in a report that we published this time last year, December 2009, and anticipating that there might be a hung parliament after the next election. We thought that Whitehall was pretty unprepared, and that critically there needed to be much clearer guidance about elections and the process of government formation after an election. And Sir Gus O'Donnell, the Cabinet Secretary, responded very positively to that recommendation of ours, and in February 2010 he published in advance of the election a key draft chapter of the new Cabinet Manual, the chapter on elections and government formation. And in the event, that proved extremely useful come the time of the election, when there was a lot of nervousness in the markets and also uncertainty amongst the media about what would happen if the election had no certain outcome, and the guidance that had been provided by the Cabinet Office in February, 3 months before, proved extremely useful. The Cabinet Manual, in its 11 chapters, only one is on elections and government formation. The others cover the role of the sovereign, Parliament, Cabinet, ministers, the law, relations with the European Union and international bodies, relations with the devolved governments. It's a guide to the whole business of government seen from the perspective of the executive branch. And a lot of it isn't new. It's not breaking new ground. A lot of it draws in existing guidance. But it's the first time all that guidance has been brought together into one single, very accessible, easy-to-read document. Well, Sir Gus, when he published the Cabinet Manual in December, announced that there would be a 12-week period of consultation. So that will close in March 2011. And during that time, it's anticipated that parliamentary select committees will want to scrutinise the draft manual. In particular, I would anticipate that the Political and Constitutional Reform Select Committee, chaired by Graham Allen MP in the Commons, possibly the Justice Select Committee, chaired by Sir Alan Beath, and quite possibly the Lords Constitution Committee, chaired by Baroness Jay, might all have an interest in holding a scrutiny hearing in aspects of the manual. There is a place for parliamentary comment, but parliamentarians must be aware that at the end of the day this is an executive document. The draft has been approved by Cabinet before it was published, and it will probably go back to Cabinet before it is published as the Cabinet Manual. As the guidance that the Cabinet have agreed, they will follow. And it, in future governments, will be up to future Cabinets to review the Cabinet Manual and decide whether there are any changes that they want to make. And it will be a living document. The model that Gus O'Donnell has quite explicitly followed is the New Zealand Cabinet Manual, and they've had a Cabinet Manual now for about 30 years. From memory, I think it's gone through 4 or 5 editions. The last 2 occasions it's been revised quite significantly, whole new chapters inserted, ministers are consulted, and it is then signed off by Cabinet collectively as an executive document in which the executive explains how, under this government, Cabinet government will be conducted. Well, it will also be published online, and if the Cabinet thinks it's out of date and that's possibly damaging, they can publish an update, and they can send a press notice or some similar notification round saying paragraph X of the Cabinet Manual has been amended and now says as follows. Yes, this is not going to lead to a written constitution. There is very little political or public demand for a written constitution in the UK. The Cabinet Manual represents a small step to writing down a little bit more of our constitution. In particular, it codifies some of the constitutional conventions which guide the behaviour of the executive. But it's not in itself a written constitution. It's not going to lead to a written constitution, but it is a very useful guide to how the executive branch works. This is precisely why Sir Gus O'Donnell and the Cabinet Office have taken great pains, first of all, to consult constitutional experts at every stage. I was consulted about the draft Chapter 6 back in the spring, and I and a small group of constitutional experts have been consulted about the draft of the whole Cabinet Manual before it was published in December. And there's now a further round of consultation in which anyone and everyone can take part. So other experts, members of the public, parliamentary committees will all be able to comment and say whether they think the constitutional conventions have been accurately captured in the manual. But the Cabinet Office team have tried really, really hard to capture the conventions as they are currently understood. I'm pretty confident that if anyone does try to challenge the government using the Cabinet Manual, that the courts will stand back and say this is not justiciable. I would be very surprised if there's any territory here into which the courts would want to tread. And in other countries where similar kinds of issues have been taken to court, the courts have generally not wanted to get involved, and quite rightly so. Constitutional conventions are not normally enforceable in the courts. They're a guide to good behaviour by politicians, and let's all hope that the politicians find the guidance in the Cabinet Manual very useful and that they follow it.